Aha. Arriving still, so.
Well, looks good.
Welcome to everyone that's here. And well done, Christian from Berlin. Hello.
Hello.
And Nisa, you're with us from London, right?
Yes, that's right, yes.
Excellent. And you've got a very clear signal, I can hear brilliantly. Super. And Gila's joining us from Herzliya in Israel. So we have quite an exciting, hopefully, agenda today. Kanu, you're with us from Dubai, aren't you?
Hello, Professor Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is very exciting. Let's just do a little go round. Those of us that are here early, we'll just introduce ourselves because not everyone knows everyone. Nisa, do you want to start? Just say hello and who you are and all that.
Yes, I'm Nisa. I've been a member of IPSCIT for over 20 years now, and enjoy being a part of the organisation. I also do poetry, and I'm studying some poetry at the moment, and live in London. Yes.
Okay, welcome, Nisa. Yeah. Kanu, why don't we go to you next?
Hello, everyone. Yeah. So I'm basically from India. So currently I'm based in Dubai, and I'm a doctorate in medical biochemistry. And my PhD was mainly focused on effect of microwave radiation, basically in the mobile phone range, on brain, on neurological effects of the microwave radiation. And after that, I worked in a pharmaceutical company in Europe. And after, from working in Europe, I moved to Dubai. And here I'm working as an assistant professor at Manipal University, where I'm teaching various disciplines of life sciences, like various subjects like nanobiotechnology, biochemistry, and other subjects, related subjects. And I'm also working as a postdoctoral fellow, where I'm working on diabetic neuropathy. So the neurological effects with the diabetic complications. So yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. And Kanu's contributed some great talks on science, conflict resolution and peace. And hopefully next month she'll prepare a talk on the neuroscience of love, which is a huge topic. You know, I think it was too much to prepare in time.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Thomas.
Okay, Christian, do introduce yourself. Yeah.
Well, I'm participating from Berlin, and welcome to you all at first. And thank you, Thomas, for giving me the opportunity to join this distinguished circle. Well, what should I say? I believe I'm the oldest. No, I'm 77. And I studied arts and culture and tried to make my living, but failed. And so I went to something more practical, to finance and economics. And after that, I became or remained a sponsor of the arts, singers, dancers, painters, and learned their perspective, and was so fascinated that I started into my third life, so to speak, the life dedicated to arts, culture, education, and to search for a new structure, how arts and culture can be structured to, let's say, balance a historic twin, because as you all know, we have the Olympic Games as the ancient floor for the body, and the twin sister of the Olympic Games were the Delphic or Pythian Games. And I fell in love with the Pythian Games and said, we have to get even. We have to change, and we have to unite the power of arts and culture. And this is the reason for me to start the Delphic Games, but first of all, to learn about it more a little later after your introduction as well.
Thank you, Chris.
I just want to warn you, I'm crazy.
Yeah, thank you. The question is the top chap in charge of the Delphic Games, talking about them. Helena, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, my name is Helena Lorentzen, and I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, but currently I'm studying at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, and I'm doing a master in international affairs and diplomacy. And currently I'm writing my thesis about meditation, its possible role in peace building, prevention of conflict, and mediation.
Right, welcome. Yes. Sean, we'll just do a quick introducing ourselves. Your turn.
Oh, yeah. Good evening, or good day, or good evening, whatever part of the planet you're on. But I'm here at lunchtime in Ireland. My name is Sean English, and I used to teach a peace studies course, and I've been involved with Thomas there over a good number of years in various projects, peace-related, peace and philosophy. And I'm just at the moment writing a book again, and this one is on the Civilization 21. And, that's my project at the moment. So thanks.
Right, Sean, thank you so much. Priscilla, let's hear from you.
Yes, hello everyone. So nice to see everyone and be here. Priscilla Prutzman from New York. I work with the Creative Response to Conflict, which was a conflict resolution education organization founded by the Quakers. And we continue to do a lot of restorative justice work, and we do a lot of work with formerly incarcerated women and their children. We continue to do our conflict resolution and mediation. So nice to be here, and so nice to see everyone.
Right, greetings, Priscilla. She's been involved with the International Restorative Council, which I sit on, and we just had a meeting. So she's a very busy woman. Thanks for joining us, Priscilla.
Thank you.
Gila joining us from Israel. Can you hear us?
Yes, I do. I can hear you. Good afternoon. My name is Gila Haron. I'm a spiritual teacher and a meditation teacher. I'm interested in science and spirituality and how it relates to ancient civilizations and to our present and future life. And I've known Thomas for the last 20 years. And we did some work towards peace, I would say, between faith and between Israelis and Palestinians, not with a lot of success, but in any case, we tried. And I have, in my education, I studied psychology and education and other things as well at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Thank you.
Right, greetings. Thanks, Gila. Okay, Katyeni, can you hear me? Do introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Katyeni Singh. I am working as an assistant professor in political science. My research has been on non-killing and peace, how to spread peace in the society. So we have worked on non-killing index, and more importantly, we'll be introducing a course at our university in collaboration with Dr. Thomas, that is non-killing religions. So hopefully we'll be starting it within the next month.
Greetings, Katyeni. And good, nice to see you. Okay, right, thank you everyone that's introduced themselves, I think now. Let me just start by saying a few words of introduction. Nicola is with us. She's helping very much behind the scenes with recording and all the rest of it. So thank you, Nicola. So the World Intellectual Forum is, as you know, a sort of body, a think tank, if you want. We were set up not exactly in rivalry to, but in parallel to. Our mission is different to the World Economic Forum. We believe that the world's problems are too complex for just economics to solve. And in fact, we think that economics alone is actually a bit dangerous. We think that any kind of mono solution to the world's problems is dangerous. We have to do joined up thinking, holistic thinking that involves spirituality, science, political science, culture, the arts, poetry. We're human beings, we're Homo sapiens, we're not Homo specificans. And the trouble with our military industrial scientific system is it tries to drill us into becoming robots. And if you've read Surveillance Capitalism, you know how pernicious. And the arts and music and so on are being forced out of the curriculum of schools. And in the university system, even the humanities are now under threat. So that we're part of the fight back, if you want, the resistance to this dumbing down of humanity and this robotization. Intellectuals are now disregarded. And I was horrified during the Brexit movement to see the role of intellectuals being ridiculed, etc. So that's why I got involved with the World Intellectual Forum. It was set up in 2017. We're part of the resistance to that technocratic takeover bid. And it seems to me that Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum have sold their soul to the devil of geekism and technocracy military, which rely on this. So anyway, that's just to set the scene for those of you that are coming late to the party. There's a whole history behind this, and it's a peace project. The World Intellectual Forum is a gathering forum for all intellectuals, to stand up for peace. And by peace, we also mean joined upness, which is our right to wisdom. I want to just say a few words of introduction and then hand over to a sequence of speakers. We're joined by some eminent people. Obviously, the pandemic in India is affecting us all. It's a tragedy of incalculable proportions. And we'll hopefully hear in a minute from some people from India. They can tell us what's going on the ground. However, it's not the only place. I want to point out that I read a New York Times article yesterday that Latin America is having as bad a meltdown as India, but it's not in the world's media attention. Latin America is the largest, number of deaths per region of any region at the moment. Brazil, other countries, and bodies are piling up and being burned, as we speak here. And yet, obviously, India's grabbed the world's media attention, but Latin America is just as bad. So this is a global catastrophe we're living through. I never thought when I got involved with the World Intellectual Forum, we'd be sitting here with this on our doorstep, And there remains the shocking fact that we still don't know the origin of this pandemic, what's called the etiology, as our doctors will confirm. Now, I used to work in medicine, and I know that you can't cure a disease, you can't prevent its recurrence until you absolutely know its etiology. Now, as coordinator of the World Intellectual Forum in Europe, I've sent some letters to various authorities calling for a commission of inquiry into the etiology of the pandemic. We were told several stories at the beginning. The Chinese Communist Party told some stories. The Trump administration was the establishment media adopted the Chinese Communist Party etiology, and that's really all that's been on offer. There have been other possibilities. Now, the fact is that a lot of research points to this having possibly been bioengineered in a military lab. And I would say it's at least 50% possible that that's the case. And I'm not an expert virologist, but I do have training in the history and philosophy of science. And I know enough to know that that is a strong possibility. And recently, a journalist for the Washington Post, Josh Rogan, has, published articles in the Post saying, this is scandalous. We're being denied even asking that question. This is probably, he says, a bioengineered pandemic. Now, with so many people dying in India, Latin America, and Europe, and everywhere, for God's sake, we deserve the right to know and to ask questions. And so I discovered this thing, for those that aren't familiar with this, called the Bioweapons Convention. It's a treaty that all nations of the world, apart from Israel, I don't know why, please sort that, Gila, have signed, according to which, if any country in the UN system suspects another country of making bioweapons or doing research leading to bioweapons, they can invoke the treaty, and the UN Secretary General then has the authority to send a high-level medical team of researchers in to inspect their labs. And they have to open every door, every cupboard, every locked secret archive, and that's in law, and every country has signed that. Now, I've written to various authorities, the Canadian government. I spoke to the office in Geneva, which monitors that treaty, and I said, please action this. Now, I'm only a philosopher and intellectual, and they all kind of look at you and laugh and say, no, a government has to authorize this. So I've been knocking on the doors of various governments, and of course the correspondence gets mislaid between different departments, the typical bureaucratic way of dealing with it. I've asked colleagues in other countries to request their country to officially action it. All it would take is the Indian foreign minister, say, or the Irish foreign minister, or even I think Morocco, Morocco, yes, but Monaco might even be in itself a member of the UN. So Helena could ring the foreign minister of Monaco and say, please action this. I mean, there's nothing to lose. It's why we all pay for this bioweapons treaty convention. It was signed in London, and yet incredibly nobody's yet either. It's not in the media. You'll never hear this in the media. So I've reached the end of my patience with this, and I'm going to announce, I think we at the World Intellectual Forum should set up a commission for inquiry into the etiology of the pandemic. There's enough of us, enough people, there's various Nobel Prize winners, there's eminent scientists on our board internationally. They don't always come to these meetings, that we do have some clout, and I don't think we should, I'm sick of waiting for governments to do the right thing. I think we intellectuals have to now say, okay, we're going to set up a commission of inquiry ourselves, and we will then invite people to give evidence, people that have evidence outside the mainstream narrative of, this is how it was. And of course, if the Chinese Communist Party eminent scientists want to contact us and say, here's the dossier, this is the absolute proof it came from the Wuhan seafood market via a bat and a pangolin mutation, fine, let them present that evidence. We have to approach this neutrally as proper intellectuals, okay? Right, so that's one thing I want to share. And anyone who has expertise or an investment in being involved in that, please contact me, outside of this forum, or send me a message in chat or whatever. The next thing I want to mention is just a little thing, but it's a big thing. Hopefully we're going to be joined shortly by a colleague from Lebanon, who was staying here for 2 weeks. We did a lot of work on Middle East peacemaking. It's many people know I've been involved with setting up, as Gila said, we did our Truth and Reconciliation Commission work from the Middle East. And that's a live project still going on from my Peace Institute. And I've discovered, I'm doing a commentary on the Quran to match my biblical commentaries. And I discovered an amazing philosopher. I have to share this guy with you, right? He's called Ibn Kemal. He lived from 1468 to 1534. He was Turkish Ottoman intellectual. And he was so important, he was called the Sheikh al-Islam, appointed in 1526, which is like the chief sheikh of the whole Islamic world. Now, he wrote 200 works in Turkish, Persian, and Arabic. He did commentaries on the Quran, treatises on Islamic law, theology, Sufism, ethics, history, several books on Arabic and Persian grammar, literature, and poetry. And he wrote a history of the Ottoman family, And he was very important because he defended the works and traditions of Ibn Arabi, the great Sufi. Many more traditionalist, literalist Muslims said Ibn Arabi was too intellectual, a heretic. This guy, as the top authority, said, no, Ibn Arabi is kosher. He is the man, and he called him the Sheikh al-Akbar, the greatest master. Okay, so I'm reading about this guy, and I'm sort of going weak at the knees, thinking we're so pathetic nowadays in comparison to these people. And then I read, he wrote a book called the Risala fi Bayan al-Aql, which is the treatise on the exposition of the intellect. Right, this guy wrote a summary of the views of all philosophers that he knew or could find about on their teachings about the intellect and its different types. So I don't know if it's been translated to English, but that's the sort of guy that we should reach out to in terms of increasing the level of debate about Middle Eastern politics and spirituality and religion. Where are the equivalents to him today in Islamic and Sufi and Middle Eastern world? Let's have a debate about the nature of the intellect based on the work of Ibn Kemal, because you see, to the Islamic world, the intellect is divine. The work we're doing here in the World Intellectual Forum is sacred. And I don't know, some Western scholars seem to have lost that concept, which I think is to our detriment. It's we that are in poverty here. Okay, so the other thing I want to share is I've been involved this last week with a very important conference at the University of Harvard. We've lost the role of intellectuals, and now we believe in intelligence, quote unquote. I mean espionage. The West, Britain particularly, we rely on spies and espionage for our power, not on truth and intellect anymore. So anyway, I was invited to a symposium at Harvard University Center for Intelligence Studies, which is academic center, part of the Belfer Institute, run by a guy called Paul Colby. And these are top-level academics specializing in intelligence. And they had this amazing conference that I was invited to, a half-day Zoom event, which was about how American intelligence has made a strategic decision to shift its priorities away from fighting Cold Wars or fighting enemies or fighting Russia or China, like normal espionage type stuff. Under Biden, they've said, no, what we're going to focus on is fighting common planetary threats, especially global warming, right? So American intelligence is now committed to actually finding out the truth about global warming, making that information available in the public in a comprehensible way, getting the scientific facts before the public and before the president and the cabinet, so they can make the right decisions. Intelligence is supposed to be fact gathering. It presents the evidence to the political authorities who make decisions. And anyway, there was an admiral speaking. There was a guy in the British Army tasked with finding out how British defense strategy should shift to fighting this planetary threat of global warming. I learned about how the Arctic polar vortex is now breaking down. Cold air is coming south because of that. The Arctic is warming up 3 times faster than any other place on the planet for all kinds of reasons, which has incalculable consequences. It means that sea level rises are imminent. So it was sobering stuff, but I wanted to share it because it's an example of how the intelligence community are finally catching up with the intellectual community. We academics have been saying for a couple of decades that we ought to green our military. I met an Indian general who had a charge of an eco battalion. Their job is to plant trees and stop deforestation. Well, in my view, every country in the world should have a regiment or a battalion or whatever, a division, simply for ecological catastrophe management, solving floods, fires like in Australia, drought, etc., and all the mass consequences that arise from this. Anyway, it's good news, I thought. Okay, so that's enough from me. I'm going to say more at the end. I'll do a summary at the end, but I think we should hear from our distinguished speakers now. I just want to give a sketch of what I've been up to in this last month since we met. We meet on the 30th of each month. It's nice to see you all. Okay, so look, I think given the crisis in India, can we just allow our Indian guests to share with us briefly what they know from what's going on the ground, and why has India, what is going on there? Kanu, you've been in touch with relatives and stuff, haven't you? Can you tell us what you know about what's going on in India with COVID?
Yeah, Professor Thomas, what we have been watching in news and this through the media. I don't know the reality may be much more than that. The reported cases are not that higher. The cases are actually maybe much more. The thing is that people became reluctant, and the government was not prepared for this sort of emergency. And the thing is that the new variant, which the UK variant, which has a double mutation and which makes the virus more infectious, now it's causing the infection in in the younger people. So the thing is that now earlier was the case when the people with comorbidities were becoming more infected, like somebody with hypertension or diabetes. But now in this case, since the virus has become more infective and it's entering into the cells, your nasal epithelium and your lung epithelium, so it's collapsed. The people are having the lung collapses. So because of that, the young people are also dying. So what I don't know exactly what to say. The government, it's a failure of the system. But the medical professionals are, relentlessly, they are just trying to save people, but still this variant it's difficult to understand the variant because the mutations are, because the virus is a kind of microorganism which rapidly mutates. That's the only reason why we don't have a cure for HIV, AIDS, because the virus so rapidly mutates that once you create some drug for a particular variant, it changes its shape, it changes its receptors. So when it changes the receptors, the previous vaccine or the drug fails to work. So that is the thing happening here. The UK variant has entered, and other than that, there are some cases for the triple mutations also. There is one more mutation which has made the virus even more infectious. So the capacity of the virus to enter the cells has gone much higher. So that is the case which is happening here. But since till the time we don't understand the sequence of the complete virus, we understand what is the genetic makeup of the virus, we cannot move further and to find a suitable drug. So as of now, remdesivir is also not working that good, in many cases. So that's a problem which is going on.
Well, it's a tragedy. Thanks for sharing that, Kanu. I understand some people have said that this has been made worse by lax security, the Kumbh Mela going ahead, some political rallies. You're having elections. Modi was involved in electioneering. Has that made it worse? I don't understand the politics of this. Surely a really rigorous lockdown would have been better, but maybe Katyeni, you'd like to respond and do you tell us what it's like where you are? You're in Bhopal, aren't you?
Yes, I'm in Bhopal, and even this state of Madhya Pradesh, where I'm situated, even that was affected initially by the virus. But right now, as of, we have reached a recovery rate of 80 to 90%. So things are coming back on track. And as far as the spread of virus is concerned, especially the mutation, that one actually arrived in the state of Punjab first. And over there, the problem was there were some farmer protests going on, which the people were not ready to put down because of the other political scenario going around over there. And then from the state of Punjab, the virus then gradually started spreading to the other states as well. The political rallies are going on in the easternmost state of India, that is West Bengal. So over there were actually initially the government stated for an online canvassing of collection for the elections, that whatever canvassing of election is there, just do it online. But there were some disagreements between the political parties. They were not ready to go for online canvassing. So ultimately then the government stated that, okay, fine, that we'd go with the normal sort of canvassing. And then obviously gradually there were some problems, and a lot of, I mean, this was not just confined to political rallies. A large, you can say to a great extent, people were dying from other causes as well, which the media was all classifying under the category of COVID deaths. There have been cases of jaundice, other kind of diseases also because of which people are dying, but all those have been categorized as coronavirus deaths. So because of that, there has been confusion as well. Media is also spreading, and one other thing is that there's a lot of hoarding being done by the people. Like people are holding around 100 oxygen gas cylinders inside their home. They are hoarding all the medicines. So the people who actually need it are not able to get it, while as some people are just keeping it with themselves without any need for it. So that kind of problem is basically occurring.
Oh dear. Well, you know, there is that that problem as well. Yeah. Anyway, it's a nightmare, and we send our love to India and to all of you that have relatives, friends there. And I know that Germany sent some. Thank you, Christian. Your nation sent a whole bunch of equipment to make oxygen, because obviously running out of oxygen is a key thing here. I think Germany was the first foreign power to send it. Britain has sent stuff, and America is also sending things. So, you know, but I wonder. Anyway, you know, what can we do as intellectuals? Well, my response is to set up this pandemic inquiry into etiology. And I'd love to work. I tried to contact the Indian Institute of Virology, and I will send more information. Am I right in thinking, Kanu, that the Indian virologists haven't themselves made any kind of vaccines? They're importing ones from abroad. Is that right? Kanu, did you hear that? Do you know, or Tachani?
Sorry, can you repeat, Professor Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, what the vaccines that you're using in India, are they homemade? Have you made your own vaccine?
No. The vaccine, actually, yes. There is one vaccine which is named as the trade name is Covaxin, which is manufactured by Bharat Biotech, that is an Indian company. But other than that, there's a vaccine which is AstraZeneca, which is designed by Oxford, and that is being produced by Serum Institute of India. But the formula is given by the AstraZeneca, which is the Oxford medicine, that is Covishield. So there are some indigenous vaccines, and there are some vaccines which are being in contract with other companies.
Right. And vaccine shortage is a problem, I understand.
Shortage is a problem, yeah, because of the such a big
high population rate.
Yeah, that is an issue.
And also whether these vaccines work with the new variant that you're describing.
Yes, there have been reports that people, those who have been vaccinated, are less hospitalized. I mean, the hospitalization is less in those cases. So they're not going to very critical conditions. So that's, yes, it does work.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, it's a scary time, and all of us who love India, as I do, will be deeply distressed, you know. Okay, I think let's try and move on to something slightly more positive. You know, what can we as intellectuals do? Here we are, facing meltdown as a planet. Latin America's going up in smoke, India. Well, we could always get very depressed about this and do nothing. But I think we can, you know, we have a duty to keep our faith, our optimism, our, you know, our belief in life. Somehow we will get through this. We will find the cause of this. I'm personally, you know, pledging, I'm going to find out where this came from, and I'm going to nail whoever did it, right, with your help. And then afterwards, what are we going to do? Well, what's life for? Isn't it for sharing beauty and meaning and pleasure? And, you know, isn't intellecting the verb also a pleasure? Isn't poetry a pleasure? And that's where I really support Christian's work, who's going to speak for us next. He's been involved with this project to reform the Delphic Council. The Delphic Games were parallel to the Olympic Games. And we've had the Olympic Games for 100 years. Great, we love them. Athletes every 4 years, you know, trot around on stage, showing off their skills. But what about the poets of the world, the musicians, the dancers, the intellectuals? So Christian has a heavy duty on his shoulders. And I think we in the World Intellectual Forum should support what he's doing. Particularly since I coordinated in Europe, I want to pledge support because Delphi is like the spiritual capital of European culture, really. I've been there and communed deeply in Delphi. It's where Pythagoras and Orpheus and so on, there's an amazing tradition of philosophy. It's the birth of philosophy there. For those of you that probably know, there was "Know Thyself" written over the temple in Delphi. So anyway, Christian, it's over to you. Tell us why the Delphic Games, tell us what you're doing and what we can do to help, and what your vision is. Welcome, sir. You'll have to unmute. Sorry, you're on mute here.
Yes, okay. At first, once again, thank you very much, Thomas, to having the opportunity to reach out to you. I'm now in my third life. My first life was studying arts, culture, handicrafts, and trying, or with the intention, to become an artist. And after I finished the studies, I recognized I'm not so talented as I dreamed to be. And so I said, let's move to another profession to make your living at first. And I went to a bank, learned finance and banking, and remained a sponsor of the artists, in this case, singers, conductors, and painters. And being confronted with the artists themselves, I recognized their real difficulties, their real lack in structure. And I asked myself how I can help, beside helping them to get a contract to make their living. And I started to analyze the arts and cultural world. What are the biggest, let's say, elements nowadays in entertainment? And naturally, I came up with sports as the major part of the entertainment world. And I said, why we have no floor like the Olympic Games for the arts? And this was my main question. And I started, and I made up in my mind, I would like to initiate being sponsor of artists and learning how they live their living and make their living, and how they are squeezed among contracts and difficulties. I thought there must be a structure developed helping the arts and the artist as such. And the big difference between sports and arts to me was not that there is not a widespread interest, but sports is brilliant organized. They have the lobby. They are, let's say, every day you hear the last results of sport competition, but arts itself is just playing an isolated life, highly honored, but only if we unite the talents, we get power. We gain power and influence. And if, for example, you consider sports as single events, they would never reach this level of awareness in society worldwide. But arts and culture, they have no structure. This was the difficulty, because every artist you ask for, what makes you an artist, you get 100 answers, and everyone is convinced that's the only way, and that's the real true way of doing things. And I recognized also in cultures, you cannot compare cultures, because if it's deeply inside developed, if it's carried out in a responsible way, who are you to evaluate and say this is more important than the other? So it was difficult to find a way, and so I tried, or I made the risk, or took the risk to set up a structure in art categories and art disciplines. 4 of the categories, for example, were known, such as musical arts and performing arts, visual arts. And then I came up with 2 different categories, and the scientists at that time said, this doesn't exist. I came up with social arts and communication, and ecological arts and architecture. Architecture, they felt comfortable, but ecological arts, this was 25 years ago, before we founded the International Delphic Council. And they said to me, it doesn't work, stop dreaming. Well, however, I came up with a structure and with a title, the so-called Olympic Music Games. And I received very shortly a letter from the National Olympic Committee of Germany. Dear Mr. Kirsch, we see and hear and read with pleasure that you are doing this. On behalf of the IOC, we just want to warn you, don't use the word Olympic. And I said, oh, gee whiz. And they underestimated my obnoxious nature. Because if somebody says, you are not permitted, I ask the simple question, why? And so I said, well, even if I'm the aunt, but let's fight the elephant. And I went to the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, to the dean of the classical philology department, and said, Professor Flasshar, I wanted, and he said, just tell me what you intend to do. And I told him the same as I said to you. Yes, Thomas? I couldn't understand.
I wasn't saying anything. I was just making hand gestures, that's all. Sorry.
And he said, what you are telling me has nothing to do with Olympia. This is Delphi. And Delphi, I didn't know so much. I know Oracle of Delphi, Pythia, Greece, and that's it, to be honest. And so he said, what you're dreaming about, what you want to do is related to Delphi, to the spirit of Delphi, to the arts, to Apollo, to the dimension away from the body. Because in ancient times, they had the balance between body and mind. And body is taken care enough. Take care of the mind with Delphi. But you make up your mind. And I had sleepless night and changed all the documentations. And at that time, I had no computer. So it was a tough work at a time. And I stopped my work and left my office, a finance and economic office at that time, to my partner and went to Greece to know more, visiting Delphi. and started living there for half a year, falling in love with that place. Even allow that I was locked into the theater place when it was locked, obviously, for the audience, to sleep at night at the stage, to dream what happened in former times. I went up in the very early mornings as well to the Parnassus, to the mountain. And it was to me very inspiring and a permanent learning. Living there half a year, I recognize this is my dedication. That's what I want to develop and to learn. And I took lessons by politicians, by artists, ask them what they have in mind. I learned from the people of Delphi, as well as from the visitors, the citizens, and recognized in interviews, they ask why a German recovers this. The Olympic Games were recovered or reinvented by a French, and now a German comes with the Delphic Games. What is this all about? Why foreigners? And I said, this must be like this. And they looked very angry at me. And I said, because if you're surrounded by beauty, you don't see it anymore, or easily you take it for granted and you don't know what you have, because so many messages to solve today's problems, you get hints in ancient times, in ancient Greece. And with this, let's say, I created an own environment, became even advisor in the Greek elections to politicians, and was in charge for ecological and cultural arts for the Greek politician, being at that time being the designated Minister of Culture for the next decade. Unfortunately, he couldn't manage. However, I learned and came and was surprised by a big move in Berlin, the collapse of the wall. And this was a chapter, I must admit, which was totally new to me. I never believed it. And when Greek friends told me, Christian, the wall collapsed, I said, yes, 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 being in another room. And tomorrow the Pope gets married. Fine, fine. Because I couldn't believe what I hear. And I cried, to be honest. And with this, I realized I have to go back. And I went back to Berlin, went back to Munich first and then to Berlin, and said, now time has come to found and to initiate the International Delphic Council. And being finance and economic advisor for about 20 years, I asked friends from various continents and countries and said, please, come, let's sit together, let's change the world. And let's give the Olympic Games their twin sister. Let's reunite also body and mind, making the world wealthier in its structure. And they came from 5 continents, 20 nations were present. We were 57 people. And it was an impressive, very touching moment. And we naturally started. The biggest delegation came naturally from Greece, and from Russia. They loved what we are doing. And finally, we had to restructure and reorganize the arts and culture world, as I just said. And we divided 6 chapters: musical arts, performing arts, language arts, visual arts, social arts, and ecological arts. And in the statutes we wrote down, we intend it's an obligation of us to strengthen education and to initiate as soon as possible the International Delphic Academy. This was the beginning, and this was 1994. And it was at the very same place and castle where the 2+4 unification negotiations took place of the unification of Germany. So a very historic place, and it showed and expressed to me, we have to give a peace sign from Berlin, recognizing how we harmed by wars the world, and peace, and activating in peace, not just by proclaiming peace, but by actions. I intended to convince my people, and I could do so. And so we had 2 years later in St. Petersburg, the first Delphic World Congress, and pushed for the very first Youth Delphic Games 1997 in Tbilisi, in Georgia, under the patronage of Edward Shevardnadze. And in 2000, the first Delphic Games for adults took place. And we considered in 4 years intervals, we want to have youth, and in 4 years interval, adult, 2 year games, 2 years apart from each other. And we did so and learned, and it was a testing phase to honor arts, culture, structures existing, and how to unite them without diminish them, without dilute them. So how to strengthen those talents which are not so much at home in the digital world, but in the arts and thinking world, in the strategic world, and we have to do better, and we need a project to show to the world, to participate. It's worthwhile to be active, to excite, because if we are isolated, just in little chambers sitting together, world will not know, and world cannot participate. And this was the begin to start, let's say, with the Delphic Games and the Youth Delphic Games. And so we had Delphic Games for Youth, 2003 in Germany, 2007 in the Philippines, 2011 in Johannesburg, and Adult Games 2000, they were the first in Moscow, the second were in Malaysia, the third in Korea. So we learned how arts and culture has developed in different continents, under different influences, how we preserve and honor identity, and how we bring identities together, recognizing the opposite of the business world. The business world is looking for a loophole, where I can make my money. We search for what unites us the most. And all of a sudden, we recognized it's the art, the handicraft arts. The basic, the art as such, is in essence hardly underestimated. And if I realize when we came into the mechanical world we're living today, the handicraft gets no honor anymore, or less and less. The creativity of the individual, which makes the planet, the globe, worthwhile to live in, these shades and shapes are in danger if we are not taking care of these so-called facets of our globe. And this finally lead to 2013, or 2013, for example, when we had the first Delphic Summit in Athens and Delphi, and 2016 in Delhi. And here in this aspect, we did even a testing how to attract the youth, the teachers, the youngsters. We initiated the Delphic Art Wall, a wall that unites. You know, Berlin was divided by a wall. And we said, let's make an art wall, a wall that unites. And we did the very first art wall initiative in Hyderabad. and the schools were excited, the teachers were excited, and we considered it as a testing, but it was overwhelming. And thereafter, we started this in Greece. And finally, we structured this in a more systematic way and did it in Berlin, in the castle where we were founded tens of years ago. So to embrace, let's say, the adults, the teachers, the educators, the children, to, let's say, encourage them, put your dreams in a painting, do it. Not just talk about it. Don't live your life in the digital world. Do it yourself. And this was a change, and we came up into a vision. 2018, I was participating digital when Mr. Modi, for example, was giving a speech in Davos in the World Economic Forum. And it was the so-called confirmation for that, what we were already planning, the World Cultural, the Delphic World Cultural Forum. We said it's not permitted just to give the business world a floor, and reducing mind, spirit. And Delphi is such a bride, such a great opportunity to, let's say, invite almost unlimited the talents of the world. And with the Delphic Games, in frequent, let's say, intervals, we promote and excite the world, and even those who are far from so-called spiritual part, they are excited by their arts. And with their arts, you get their attention, and with their attention, you get that what you want and what we need: influence in politics, influence in the sponsorship levels, because the business world is desperately searching for how I can show off and add my image to something which will remain, which will not fade away, or is just a product to be sold, and after it's finished, it's over. That's what we're doing with the Delphic Games, open to society and to the brilliant minds and networks existing. Let's do it together. The umbrella, the stage of Delphi is so rich, is so great, it has space for all of us. And let's share the attention we desperately need to get politicians and business world to move. The unique selling points. For example, a friend of mine made just a very wonderful remark. He said, the Olympic competitions are about the competition of the bodies. Who is the fastest? Who is the strongest? The Delphic competition is about the competition of the mind. Which spiritual creation is the most meaningful? Which work is enduring? Does it promote freedom, justice, morality, and humanity? Olympia corresponds with the taste of time. Delphi corresponds with the necessity of the time. And let us just summarize unique selling points of Delphi: the Greek history. We have water as the symbolic element compared to fire in the Olympic Games. The Delphic poet, the Delphic symbol with interlacing rings. And I would like to end my speech with a little remark of a friend I had faded away years ago. Some of you might know, have heard about him, Lord Yehudi Menuhin. He said to me, we have become expert at polishing each single note and run the risk of not hearing the melody anymore. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Christian. That was a brilliant overview. I think we're going to try and play the film that you sent us.
if the film opportunity, this is a 2-minute film, and if you can you play the film, or because the last suggestion of yours was you might be able to.
Yeah, I'm hoping Nicola can I'm going to put sharing screen for everyone.
Can you put the film in the chat with the link, and then we could see it individually, and it would be
If we can't
easier.
play it now, we will do that. But,
It's a 2-minute one we published, and it gives a sense.
right. Let's see if Nicola can get this together here. Fingers crossed. But your talk, meanwhile, was very brilliant, and we'll take some questions. If we can show the film first, it'll be good. But yeah, here we go.
The music and the tone is missing.
Yeah. Can you get the music going, Nicola? There's some wonderful music going with this. Oh, well, we can see the images. And when we send you the link, you can hear the music.
And this, allow me to say so, this doesn't belong to me, this is ours, this is us. And I would like to invite you to ask for more information, to be assistance, so that we will spread throughout the world with that movement, having tested the essence, the spiritual wealth, more than 20 years in practice.
Yeah. You've done wonders, Christian. I take my hat off. And I should just say that I first heard of this from a man called Dr. Carl Shapley, who Gila met, who's dead now. But he, I think, attended that meeting in Petersburg in '94. He came back from it and gave me some leaflets. And I always thought, these are my brothers and sisters. That's why it's important we now collaborate.
Everything has its time, and I believe time has come for us to stretch our cultural muscles. Yep. Because if we are hiding the power, the spiritual power, the artistic skills, if we don't unite them on a floor, we will get no influence.
No, it's just the world will be taken over by zombies and robots and you know, and testosterone fueled athletes who are just.
We, from the Delphic family, we need desperately your presence, your activities being at the screen, and those we even don't know yet, but you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so look, thank you. Thanks for showing the film, Nicola. We'll work on the sound. But anyway, any questions for Christian? You've got an opportunity now. Anyone want to jump in with a question? Do we have any poets or artists in the meeting? Priscilla, do you have a question for him?
I think this is a great idea. I love the symbolism of the water. And thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I love to share to become richer. It's just a very tricky way of getting rich. And so if you can think among your friends, among the so-called political or business powerhouses who want to move something, want to share something unique, and sometimes even, let's say, scratch to the immortality, to become unforgotten as being among the initiators, the supporters at the beginning. It's for us, and Thomas, I don't want to please or pamper you but I never ever received a letter like yours as, let's say, a good week ago, and recognizing how you look like, knowing you hundreds of years before.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes. I mean, those of you that know me now have an office piled with correspondence that's been waiting sometimes years. And I have about, 500 letters I'm still in the middle of doing. And when I have a volunteer come, we get some little tiny inch through the correspondence pile. And I just happened to have this amazing literate Lebanese woman who was typing away at the speed I speak. And we were able to do 50 letters in 2 weeks. And one of them was to you. It's been on my urgent correspondence pile for the last 10 years, And it just,
I feel deeply touched that I'm among those being answered on the spot. Namaste.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen. I've got a question, but Sean, you come from Ireland, a land of poets and dreamers and novelists, James Joyce, the bards of old. What do you think this would go down in Ireland?
Oh yes, I mean, I certainly didn't know very much about it, but the talk was very interesting. So thanks very much for filling us in. There are similar events, that promote bringing people together under the artistic and culture umbrellas. So it's great that there are some that are there that could feed into the Delphi idea in Ireland and in most other countries. So it would be great to bring in the existing organizations or groups that are there helping the established or establishing artists and poets. And that's just my contribution.
Jen, exactly. I'm with you. Really, well, Ireland is known as a country of poets and musicians. And the contribution of your country is almost unlimited, recognizing also the religious impact through Europe in former centuries.
Okay, so yeah, I would add just the following that, I've been involved with the Druid community and the bards of Britain and Ireland, and Sean, knows this. There are various academic, in Wales, the Senedd, and there are various official bodies for artists and poets in all countries, actually. And then also countries have things like the Goethe Institute or l'Institut Français or the British Council to promote culture. I think what we need as a structure, I don't know how far you've got with this, is a Delphic Games council in each country. Here in France, I will try and get the French poets, French artists to create such a thing. We will lobby the French cultural minister. In France, they take culture incredibly seriously. That's why I love living here. I'm a poet and intellectual. In Britain, you're not taken seriously. In England, it's become a little rabid capitalist, brainwashed, robotized culture. I'm sorry to my English friends, but that's what it has become. Brexit makes sense to them. Whereas to me, Brexit is the most ridiculous nonsense. Culturally, it makes no sense. But in France, we love culture. And so, yes, I pledge to support you with all the instruments I can leverage.
I thank you very much, Thomas, because it's to my understanding, I believe some countries remained sensitive enough to hear to the melodies of arts and culture. Some, let's say, buried their talents. And so, for example, knowing, and let's say, I like my country, Germany, very much, but I recognize the so-called spiritual power has faded away of Germany. They refer to past centuries to prove that they are spiritual and that that their philosophers are good. True, very much true. However, they are focused so much on technology that the investments are almost kept away from arts and culture, or when they speak about arts and culture, they speak along the line you heard about possibly. We had 2018, the European Heritage Year, Cultural Heritage Year, here in Europe. And it was, and every country had to contribute. And the person in charge for Germany was a person who just saw renovation of buildings and not the intangible cultural heritage. So all the spiritual parts were just ignored. And I felt so sorry. And this gave me hope. Let's not be afraid to go to the highest ones. And I wrote a letter to Mr. Tajani, the president of the European Parliament, hoping to get an answer sooner or later. Within 3 days, I received an answer from the office. It's the most brilliant concept. Was launched until today we received, because I offered the European Delphiad to make continental games and worldwide games as we already had. And we tested that it could work. And so the European Delphiad, the continental Delphiad in Asia, in Africa, will come alive to hear the flavor and see the facets of the arts and power, arts and culture power. And this is what I believe people are desperately waiting for.
Yeah. Thank you, Christian, again. And well, we're going to work on this, folk, and you know, let's pledge to support this as intellectuals. You know, my definition of what is an intellectual includes the artists, the poets, the musicians, but only, you know, not just the kind of robot artists. I mean, it's a certain type of artist is also an intellectual. I'm thinking of Rilke, the poet, who was a great inspiration to my work. You know, these are artists who transcend their particular medium. They speak universal works. Hermann Hesse is another, Goethe. You know, where are they today? Where are their caliber? That's our job in the World Intellectual Forum, is to find them. And I would like everyone on this Zoom call and who listens to this on YouTube to consider themselves recruited as wisdom agents for the Delphic Games revival. We're the scouts. If you know any artists in your community, if you know any musicians, get them in.
Explore, dear Thomas, because, for example, India has many unique contributions to the world. We have, for example, 200 ways of textile within India. And the handicraft world in India is looking to the genes. So the shades, the flavor, what is our backbone, what is our belief, what is our talent, our skill, is very often buried by technologies, and we look all alike more or less. Why not helping the handicraft arts and all sorts of arts not requiring digital knowledge? We have someone who can help, being better than me in the digital world. But I tell you, we are filled up with talents.
Right. Okay, well, thank you so much, Christian, again. Your enthusiasm is catching, and we stand ready to help in any way we can. And all the little countries like Israel or Lebanon, countries in the Middle East, they're all brimming with artists and culture. And in the Balkans, I was hoping we'd be joined on this call by Marco Pren. He's organizing events for the European Cultural Capital of 2025. It's going to be up in the Socha River Valley, and they're going to be focusing on peace. So, you know, but he will no doubt watch this call, and Slovenia becomes the European Union president soon, I think. So I think we can work through the Council of Europe and the European Union. I don't know if the cultural ministers of the European Union are together. We ought to write to them. We should lobby them. So there's a lot of work to do. And meanwhile, let's go on singing. The metaphor, just to I would like to share as a Druid is in the Welsh tradition, there was a famous Druid king called Bran, and Bran invaded Ireland. I'm sorry about that, Sean. Anyway, he was fought back. He lost. He had to come back to Harlech. He got to Harlech, and he was such a big king. He made a bridge with his body that all the defeated army could go back across from Ireland to Wales on his body, which was a bridge. Right. So this is a mythical story. Anyway, and then he died. He died in Harlech, not least because he just elongated between the two countries and had a whole arm across his body. But also he died of battle wounds, right? Great King Bran. But he said, as he was dying, he said, yeah, I'm dying, but my head is going to go on prophesying. And you must bury my head at the White Tower in London. As long as I'm buried there and there are ravens there, the country will be protected. The raven is the oracular bird of the Druids, right? So that's what happened. Bran's head was cut off. It was taken to London and buried at the White Tower, which is now the Tower of London. It's still there, and the ravens have been there ever since. And every now and then a raven dies and the British people get very upset. They're about to be conquered, they think, right? So this, and Winston Churchill during World War II, he made sure the ravens were well stocked. This is a true story. Anyway, so now move to Greece. You have exactly the same story with Orpheus, who was the founder of the Orphic Mysteries, which was the ancestor of Western initiatory traditions. Orpheus was the inspirer for Pythagoras, who inspired Plato, who founded the first academy. And when Orpheus died, he was from Thrace, Bulgaria. He was a poet, a seer, and a bard. And you all know that he went to hell playing his lyre and was able to tame Cerberus and to get his beloved wife, Eurydice, out of hell by his playing music. You know, we need an Orpheus today to tame the pandemic through music, right? Orpheus could do that. He was that good at music. Anyway, unfortunately, long story, he died. He fell out with a bunch of, hysterics who didn't like him and they killed him off. It happens to some of the great and good. But they chopped his head off and threw him in the river. The head floated down the river, still uttering poetry and singing. And it floated all the way to the island of Lesbos. And it was put in an oracular cave where Orphic initiates would visit. And it's still there, to my knowledge. This was suppressed, of course, when the fanatical Christians decided all this stuff was to be, rubbed out. But secretly, it's still there. And so this story is exactly the same as the Irish story of Bran and the Welsh Druid and the Orphic head. What does it mean? What it means is, as Christian said, that culture, poetry is immortal, comes from the spirit. Even if you kill somebody, it doesn't stop it. This is the arts and culture speak to immortality, not temporality. So anyway, in the name of Bran and Orpheus, we're going to do this thing together. And we're going to make this happen. Right, let's move on. We've been joined by our dear friend Bharti Jain from India. And Bharti, give us we talked earlier about the COVID situation there, but give us an update. What's it like in your region? Where are you speaking from?
Good evening, everybody. I'm so sorry for the late coming, just because of this COVID infection. But thanks so much. Your inspiration is always there. So I am here to discuss about the youth wing we created in 2019 December with the particular mission. Looking at the scenario, we organized a conference on training children and youth in non-violence, a must for non-killing and sustainable future, for which we are all talking about. And we organized a special youth workshop, what will be a peaceful and sustainable world look like. So the purpose of this workshop was to bring the young minds together so that they can come up with their problems and issues with the real-time solutions with the young minds. And the 3-day workshop was discussed with various key problems and their workable solutions, and how conflict resolutions can help build a sustainable world. And the workshop resulted in an overall vision of a peaceful and sustainable world. And we also had a tangible experience of peace in action, because all former strangers became friends during this 3 days process. And we discussed a lot of things on violence and what exactly the issues with the young minds. And we came up that the major issue with the young minds is the parental and peer pressures. That was the biggest issues that they came up with. And when we came out with the solutions, then we found that such kind of peer mediation programs we can start with the assumptions that conflict is a natural part of life that should neither be avoided, or it should not be allowed to escalate into verbal or physical violence. So training a student to become a mediator, techniques are taught to solve the conflicts among the peers. Then parental support must be there. Then value education should be there, and it like ethical and spiritual education should be a part of the education curriculum. We also had discussion like the love education should also be a part. Love education doesn't mean the love between two persons, but the love to yourself, which is very much required in today's world. So it must be a core part of education system, so that a student should be taught about this mysterious things. Like when you genuinely love yourself, you create a mindset of acceptance and openness. You become willing to accept your life stages and situations, and you take the responsibility for your own actions. You also recognize where love, happiness, passion, and authenticity comes from. So when we acknowledge the power you hold over your life, you become satisfied with how you live with it. So loving yourself is the first step towards loving another, loving your family, your nation, your religion, and loving all humanity in all religions. So the love is a key part of the world peace. Then a student should be educated with the holistic health approach to life. So we thought that it should be a part of the regular curriculum. We also thought that sustainable solution to lack of funding to education could be education aid day. Like all education ministers of countries, they should unite and think and how the solution of giving all students and pupils a day off every year to fundraise, that could be beneficial for the whole world. Then if we come to the political scenario, then children must also be taught to the right about their constitution and laws in the curriculum. Like citizenship education should be taught, like right to duties, the laws and dharma. Like all these things should be a part of education system. So to help all such things to and to launch this work, we organized, we came up with the youth wing of World Intellectual Forum, where we want all youth from the world should come together with their different views and solutions. It's not about talking every month on different problems, but it's all about what we are doing and what we have done in this 1 month's time, what we discussed today, like what we are going to do in the next 1 month before the next meeting, what all solutions we are coming up with. So that should be our responsibility, I think, as a peace lovers. So see,
Bharti,
doing and saying are two different things. So
sorry.
what we discussed, we should take a step. Yes, we will be doing this by the next month's meeting. So it's my suggestion that we should also come up with solutions, and we should share our knowledges and presentations. And I missed the last 1 hour discussion. So yes, Thomas, you wanna?
Let me just ask Priscilla to make a few comments to what you were saying. She's got to go to another call, but Priscilla has worked with youth for many years. What do you think of what Bharti's saying? How can we?
Yes, I think that's so important to teach the basic conflict resolution skills to young people, and to have peer mediation programs. Those are life skills that really help out in society. I've taught on a college level where people have said that they were peer mediators in elementary school or middle school, and they still remember their skills. It's just so empowering. So yes, that was so important what you did at that conference, and getting more youth involved is really, really important.
Yeah.
I would love to hear more from both of you. I was asking if we could get Christian's and contact information and be in touch, because I am from the New York area, and there's lots of culture going on, combining social change and arts. So I think that's something that would go over really, really big here. So thank you all. I'm so sorry I have to leave. This was a wonderful, wonderful group, and thank you, Bharti, and thank you, Christian, and stay safe, everyone. And I'm so sorry about what's going on in India. We're thinking about all of you. And okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Yeah. So as I say, Priscilla runs this International Restorative Council, so which meets once a month on Zoom. If anyone wants to join in with that, I can send you the links. And it was set up at the same wonderful conference in New Delhi where Bharti initiated the World Intellectual Forum Youth WIF. We were supposed to be joined on this call by someone from a thing called Deep Thought in Hyderabad. Is anyone here from Deep Thought, EduTech? I don't think they've showed up, which is a shame. Let me just say, for Bharti's hopefully pleasure, there is this thing called Deep Thought, which has got a group going in Hyderabad, and they're young graduates doing all kinds of sort of innovative stuff, and they wanted to interview me and get involved with the work of the World Intellectual Forum. So I'm not quite sure why they haven't showed up at this call, but I will send them the link to the footage, and you know, they are the sort of people that ought to get involved with the youth wing party. So I'll put them in touch with you, okay? Can I just ask, do you personally have this COVID thing? I mean, you're coughing, you're not well. Do you personally have it?
Yeah, I had COVID in past 15 days. So now I'm much better. Little weakness is there, but still a little bit cough is there. But we took the precaution, and my father is serving the society with homeopathic medicine, and I also do meditation and all. So with all your wishes and with all meditation and homeopathic, I am perfectly well now. So yeah.
Well, we're sorry to hear, you know, that you have it, because you've been tireless in promoting wellness and running your courses in schools and so on. So please get well soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'm perfectly well, and I'll be back with our next this Varish Yuva Walk for Wellness Journey project that we were going to do before this yoga day. So let's hope that we will definitely with this youth wing of this Hyderabad team and other youth, we could be able to manage the things and we could serve the society in a better way. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's not a good
Thank you, Tom.
India, but okay. So now let's hear from someone who hasn't spoken much yet. Eva Lisa, you've joined us. Can you speak and tell us a little bit about where you're ringing from? Are you able to talk on your phone? Which part of the world are you joining us from? Okay, maybe not. Mysterious. I believe that Helena Lorenzen invited you, but you're welcome to speak and say a few words if you want. Murali, are you joining us from Singapore? Do you want to say a few words? Tell us how you are and what's going on in Singapore. You don't have the problems India's facing, do you?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear fine. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm not in a mood to speak now. I've taken a tablet because I'm having a runny nose, and I am also back from my work, shift work. Okay, here in Singapore, it's quite controlled, but the recent 2 weeks is again increasing. Few numbers are increasing. Previously, it was around 10 numbers per day, but now it is increasing and nearing to 40, 50 numbers per day. So, but there are enough precautions being taken by the government. So nothing to worry here about the COVID. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Murali. Those not necessarily aware of it, Murali and I have been involved with other colleagues in creating this project of the Universal Peace Tower, which, and it's still, I think, an important concept. And given what's going on in India, whether it'll happen in India, I don't know, or whether it'll be in some other country. But as a concept, we want to build a super sized tower like the Burj Al Khalifa in Dubai, dedicated to world peace, as the first such structure in the world. It's a visionary architectural project. And anyone that wants details, we have produced information package on that. And it's an exciting project. Maybe we should do it in Greece. Who knows? But the original idea is to do it in the south of India. Right. Okay. Now, Gila, we haven't heard much from you in Israel. Do you want to share what's going on in Israel with COVID and maybe make some comments on? I mean, Israel is teeming with artists, aren't you? I mean, everyone you introduced me to in your circle of friends, they're all artists of some kind or another. Surely they could get really involved in the Delphic Games project. Are you still with us in Herzliya there?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes, they're fine. Yeah.
Okay. So I like the idea of the Delphi concept. We have in Israel, basically on May, a World Festival of Arts in Jerusalem. It's a tradition for the last 30, 40 years. And whereby art companies and artists from all over the world come and present, and it's a beautiful time in Jerusalem to be and to watch those performances from all over the world. So it goes very much with the concept of Delphi, but we don't call it Delphi, but it's the same concept, I would say. And well, with coronavirus, in a way, we've been quite lucky, I would say, because we got the vaccinations. And as a test country, and I think we have already about 5 million people out of 9 million, or even more than 5 million, that were already vaccinated. So life is becoming quite normal here in Israel lately, not the politics, but life. And the children are not vaccinated. So we have two sources that we are afraid of, that the disease can take off again. It's through the children and through people who come to the airport from international places, that they can bring new, how you call it, new versions of the virus. So there's a little bit concern about it, what's going to be, but otherwise it's very good now, unless that today it's a special festival, ceremony day, religious one, for connected with the Kabbalists and the Zohar in Mount Meron, you know, Rashbi. And, you know, people gather there for a big celebration around his grave. And it's, I mean, 300,000 people or something like this, all the very frum religious people. And we had an accident last night. It was too crowded, and 45 people died, and 150 are injured. From, you know, because it was too packed, and the police was trying to make some order, but instead of order, they blocked basically the opportunity for the people to get out from the place that they were stuck in, and they were, I don't know, they were smashed, you know, one on top of the other. And it's a big tragedy. And right now, as we are talking, there are 45 funerals going on, and the hospitals expect with 150 injured people from all this religious Kabbalistic festival. So that's what's going on in Israel. I mean, you can understand that that's on the news now.
Well,
it's sad, and also it's symbolic, because it's a Kabbalistic celebration, you know, and I didn't have time to meditate on that, or but it symbolizes something, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gila.
Okay.
You mean this was a celebration for Isaac Luria? Is this
Rashbi? We call it Rashbi in the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
And is it in honor of a particular Kabbalist or what?
Yes, this one, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Okay.
You've been there.
Of the Zohar.
Yes, you've been there to his grave, and you visited those places. The cave that he was there for.
Yeah, where the Zohar.
This area around Sfat.
Yes, no, I know it. Gosh, well, that's tragic. That
it's a big tragedy. Yes.
Oh dear. So, but you know, if these were people going to a Kabbalist celebration, they're probably not too sad to be in the heavenly library sooner rather than later.
Well, those who stayed behind are very sorry because they've gone, but I also thought that it might have some kind of significance why they went and so on.
Yeah.
Like in soul level, they volunteered, but you know, I wouldn't dare saying it to anybody here in Israel. I haven't had time to work it out.
Sure. I mean, I think Gila and I watched a brilliant lecture by Gershom Scholem, who was the greatest Kabbalist scholar of the 20th century, a German intellectual, but Jewish, up in Israel. And he gave this brilliant lecture about the tselem, which is the soul body. We talking on the Zoom call, we're all physical bodies, but we also have a tselem, a soul body, which survived. In the Kabbalist teachings, the tselem is immortal. And in his talk, he gave a brilliant lecture about this. I can send anyone that wants a link. And he made a joke. He said, you'll have to just, somebody asked him a question he couldn't answer. He said, well, wait till you get to the heavenly library, then you'll understand.
Yeah, okay.
He's the only one of the few other intellectuals that, like me, believes passionately in the heavenly library. You know, I guess a golfer wants to go to the heavenly golf course, or a swimmer, the heavenly swimming pool. Gershom Scholem and me want to go to the heavenly library. And I think, you know, any of you, I'll see you up there if we don't meet before. But anyway, deep condolences to all those.
Thank you. Okay.
And Murali has put in the chat links to the World Universal Peace Tower as well. Have we been joined by Dr. B.M. Jain? Are you with us, and would you like to say something about your new book, B.M. Jain? Can you hear me? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can. Yes, greetings.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Dr. Daffern, for inviting me, because I had just seen your mail, you know, so I was late.
Yeah.
So, how much time are you allotting me to speak on my book?
Well, we have another 15 minutes for the meeting, so maybe another 10 minutes, and then we'll do a final wind up.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, let me make it very clear why geopsychology theory. Because there are mainstream theories in international relations, geopolitics, geoeconomics, liberalism, structuralism, feminism, and many more theories. What prompted me to bring out geopsychology theory in international relations? You know, I was working on this book since 2004. As a matter of fact, you know, I had presented a paper on India-Pakistan peace dialogue, a geopsychological perspective at the IPRA conference, which was held at Belgium, Leuven in Belgium. And I received very encouraging response from my colleagues and participants that, Professor Jain, why don't you write a full-length book on geopsychology as an alternative paradigm to the current and contemporary IR paradigms? That was a very difficult task. I should say that was a Herculean task for me to bring a full book on theory. Then again, I got the opportunity to teach a course at CSU Cleveland, and also I got the opportunity to teach a course at Binghamton, New York State University. So that way, in 2017, I was visiting professor at the University of British Columbia, and there my friends encouraged me again that it's a really it's a feasible theory if you work on it. So some or the other, you know, I sent my proposal to the senior editor and to the board of editors and board of trustees. That was highly controversial, you know. It was very difficult that I would get this book published, you know, from the States. But anyway, that was a long journey in brief. Now, geopsychology, the purpose of the central aim of the geopsychology theory is to bridge the existing gaps and address flaws in the corpus of IS theory. The reason being because most of IR scholars in the States and some of European countries, they were busy with the Cold War theories, isn't it? That is in terms of geopolitics. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union in December 1991, the focus was on geoeconomics. Then the third event took place 9/11, which changed, the entire scenario, that a superpower was challenged, by non-state actor. Now, this is very important to mark that non-state actors, they were not given legitimacy in international relations, because when there are two sovereign states or the two sovereign nations, they enter into treaties. Non-state actors, they were not given importance, by the Western scholars. So what really troubled me, that 9/11 really encouraged me rather, and I was prodded to write that why America failed to curb and control extremist forces, and particularly Al-Qaeda. And American President George W. Bush took a momentous step or decisions to attack Afghanistan in October 2001. Since then, the American forces have been stationing there, and President Biden has announced that America will be withdrawing its forces in September this year. Now, in fact, geopsychology, as I have defined very briefly, is a set of perception, images, and belief systems formed of the shared history, culture, nationalism, religion, ethnicity that shape mindsets and behavioral patterns of individual and non-state and authoritarian actors living in a specific geographical area. So I have taken up the case histories of India and Pakistan in South Asia, India and Pakistan in the Greater Middle East Asia, another case study. Then geopsychology of China, that is in Northeast Asia, the geopsychology of North Korea, the Supremo Kim Jong-un, and also the geopsychology of United States and Afghanistan, the Middle East. That is a very important chapter on the US failure. As a matter of fact, I have maintained in this book that America became the captive of ignorance trap, as a matter of fact, because America was not understanding that what is the Afghan society, what is Afghan culture, nationalism, social code, religious code. That was important, before sending out the forces to Afghanistan. American policymakers should have done some homework that this Afghanistan is a very difficult, rugged terrain, isn't it? And very recently, I participated in a book discussion by Andrew Reddin of Rand Corporation. And in his book, in his latest book, he maintains that American policymakers and strategic thinkers and strategic analysts, they had poor knowledge about the Afghan society. I asked him a couple of questions that why did America fail? America spent $6 trillion as disclosed by President Trump, isn't it? And in 2001 also, when I was in Philadelphia, that is State University of Pennsylvania, there I also maintained that you don't understand, the cultural nationalism of the Arab society. That is very important. You are investing a lot of money and fake research. I am sorry to say that irrelevant research is being carried out. And in this book, I worked very hard, but I didn't get even a single penny from any institution, from computer to my printer and all that. But I was encouraged by my colleagues there that it is the right way. Now, so Mr. Andrew Reddin maintains the same thing, and the US Defense Secretary, Mr. Gates, also maintained in one of the articles in February 2020 in Foreign Affairs. Look here, America has become an over-militarized state. The similar view was expressed by Richard Falk, who wrote a review of my book, and he has said that America should be very careful about the over-militarization of its society. Over-militarization state in America. So that really caused, that lot of the problem that India and Pakistan, as a matter of fact, they have the competitive psychology, isn't it? In terms of, if you look at the history, what has happened, why Pakistan chased India, that was the competitive psychology, isn't it? And President J.D. Bhutto, who in his memoirs maintained that Pakistan must make nuclear bombs even if it has to eat grass. Now look here, this is the psychology, deep-seated psychology of Pakistani ruling elites, because when Bangladesh was formed in December 1971, means the Pakistan was dismembered. So thereafter, what happened? The Pakistani geopsychology was focused on India, isn't it? That was totally India-centric foreign policy, which is being framed, not by the civilian leaders, but by the military leaders. So in this book, I have taken up the three important cases studying China's foreign policy behavior. How China could emerge as a superpower in an emerging superpower. It was, because of Pakistan, because China is Chinese nationalism, Chinese history, historical narratives are very important, because they have said that we have suffered 1 century humiliation at the hands of Europeans, 1 century humiliation at the hands of Europeans and also Japan, which had occupied the territory, isn't it, of China. So now that historical narratives are very important, because we ignore means our policymakers ignore, diplomacy ignores, foreign security policy ignore, the historical narrative, they ignore nationalism, they ignore history, they culture. So therefore now China wants to take the revenge, as a matter of fact, and has asked Japan that you please, whatever you did in 1939 to 1945, you occupied it, you destroyed Chinese culture, civilization. So China is proud of its history, proud of its culture, proud of its civilization. Now, the foreign occupiers or alien powers, they have been, as a matter of fact, ignoring this very, very fact. And I've been telling them over and again that sensibility, psychological sensibilities and psychocultural peculiarities of a particular region is very important to understand. Psychocultural peculiarities of a particular country, of a particular region. For instance, it is Afghanistan. For instance, it is Iran. For instance, it is Iraq. Why America failed in Vietnam? Because it could not, very small country, isn't it? So it failed in Vietnam, it failed in Iran, it failed in Iraq, it failed in Afghanistan. And I have maintained in this book that America could have maintained its superpower status for the entire century, 21st century, had America not squandered its money, its resources and everything, isn't it? Because it could not understand the geopsychology of the people, the geopsychology of the ruling elites of Afghanistan. And without understanding or without doing any adequate homework, the decision was taken to attack militarily, isn't it? And that is how it really squandered everything, and there was no option. Now, in this book, I have maintained the importance of non-state actors, because all political thinkers and political scientists, they have been saying, they have been highlighting the importance of state as actors. There are no other actors. So non-state actors' role is very important. Authoritarian regimes' role is very important, because George W. Bush committed an egregious blunder when he refused to hold a dialogue with Kim Jong-il, the father of President Supremo. He just, because nuclear program of North Korea could have been stopped, isn't it, long back, simply because of President George Bush's arrogance. That America is a superpower, I am the president of superpower, I will not talk to you pygmies. I will not talk to you, North Korea as an axis of evil, You are dubbing them as an axis of evil, isn't it? That hurt the nationalism, that hurt the sensibilities of North Korea, that whatever may be, we will be manufacturing nuclear weapons, missiles and all that. Now what happened? Ultimately, my thesis was proved that President Donald Trump, he went to meet, this small young guy, isn't it? Okay, to hold dialogue. So I have mentioned in my book that he's a great geopsychologist. As a matter of fact, President Trump took the right decision, because he knew it, that Kim Jong ill could take any step, isn't it? Because he had threatened that I would destroy, Japan and South Korea, and they will no more remain on the global map. He understood it. And therefore he had praised Mr. Ill. Oh, okay, great guy, great intelligent, honest, this thing or that thing. So that is how, the nuclear war was averted, though temporarily. And I just want to maintain that President Biden should also take, the lesson from what Mr. Trump had done. As a matter of fact, you may criticize his policies and all that, but in the case of North Korea, he understood the geopsychology. Now, Chinese geopsychology has also been hurt, and therefore it has really given challenge to America that look here, you have no role here to play, whether it is South China Sea or Indo-Pacific region, isn't it? And therefore there is a quad of four countries, and four great democracies, they have joined together, including India, Japan, Australia, and United States. Now look here, China, you can't contain China. My thesis is that China now has reached such a state. China is an emerging superpower, and therefore now it is the wrong thesis that you can contain China, you can restrict China. You cannot, because containment theory is absolutely false, absolutely irrelevant in the current situation. Now, another important case study is about the China, because you have given me very 10 minutes, so I have to. So Opium War, 1839 to 42, important, and President Xi Jinping, kept the memories of the past. In 2015, he held, a great show that look here, our Middle Kingdom mentality cannot be vanished. It cannot be melted. Middle Kingdom mentality that China is at the center of the world politics. Now, this is their viewpoint. You cannot go with it. So, case is United States. Now, President George W. Bush, insane, absurd, and ill-advised invasion of Iraq in 2003. Look here. Why did America invade Iraq in 2003 without the UN mandatory permission, isn't it? Because without the UN sanction, isn't it, America and Great Britain, they should not have attacked Iraq. Now because America had a wrong thesis. President George W. Bush had a wrong perception that if we liberate Iraq, people would welcome us as liberator. But that didn't happen. Because they did not know the psychology of the people. This is, I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. I will take only 2 or 3 minutes to just sum up. So I have here, mentioned the forces of historical narrative, forces of nationalism, forces of history, forces of culture, forces of geography, because geographical terrain is to be taken into account when you formulate policy or when you formulate a strategy. Now, President Biden is revising its strategy, because very recently in the article in Foreign Policy, I have gone through that American Pentagon now is revising its strategy because of 2 reasons. Number one, the rise of China in the Indo-Pacific region. So their inane and irrelevant strategy of the past, because the military elites in America have realized that we have had inane, outdated strategy, isn't it? Because times have changed, and how can we deal with China is number one. How can we deal with North Korean guy, that is Kim Jong-un, isn't it? So 3 types of forces are emerging. Number one, led by United States. Second, led by Russia, China, and North Korea. Now, please look, this kind of configuration is taking place in the world politics. One, the global order based on rule-based order led by United States. The second one is another order, under China, that is Russia, China, and North Korea. Now, this you can't undermine the importance of these 3 countries. Isn't America? If America has formed, Quad, if America has, Asian strategy to restrict China's influence, to control China's influence where in the South China Sea or in the Asia Pacific region. So it has also drafted India. But India is not happy, because the partnership must be based on equality, isn't it? And India has realized that America is treating as, okay, you please help us, but we won't give any importance to India, isn't it? Now the articles, they have appeared. Finally, I would definitely say that now what should be done, because in my recent lecture at Seattle University also, I encouraged and prodded my students, isn't it, there also, that look here, now you have got a lot of scope, isn't it? If you want nuclear disarmament, isn't it, complete nuclear disarmament, then you please, number one, carry out research on the geopsychology of the ruling elites and particularly of the authoritarian regime, number one. Number two, please try to take up research on Russian geopsychology. This is very important because Russia was earlier a superpower, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia was not given importance by America. You know it because in the power structure, Russia did not figure much. So China took the place, isn't it? China, as a matter of fact, replaced Russia. Now, Russian geopsychology is to retrieve its power. It's very simple. Geopsychology to retrieve its power. In order to retrieve its power, it took certain measures, aggressive measures. One, for instance, it annexed Crimea. It annexed Crimea, from Ukraine, isn't it? It also helped, Syrian President Assad also. In Syria, the civil war is going on since March 2011. Why? It is because of Russian President Putin's personal intervention and personal military assistance to Syria, isn't it? So authoritarian regime's role is very important, as I mentioned, in the new emerging world order. You can't undermine, you can't shy away from this fact that they have a major role to play in reshaping, redesigning on, and China particularly wants that it will reshape the world order based on Chinese characteristics. Please mind it, based on Chinese characteristics, based on the history, based on its geography, based on its Middle Kingdom mentality. And China is really going ahead, in this direction, isn't it? So my final word that in brief, the time has come for research agenda in IR to take cognizance of psychological preponderance. Psychological preponderance in the thinking and behavioral patterns of non-state and dictatorial actors. As such, the GT's role, GT means geopsychology theory's role and place in the global political and security order can be neither devalued nor neglected. Now, this is very important and shortly, briefly, I will introduce this book. Thank you.
Okay.
For giving me this opportunity.
No. Thank you so much, Professor B.M. Jain. Your concept of geopsychology is really important. And it's a shame we had to have only a little glimpse of it. I think maybe at the next forum, we meet on the 30th of each month. Maybe we can, go into this in more detail. But can I just say that Professor Jain and I met years ago at Ladnun under Dr. Gandhi's auspices, and he's been a tireless exponent of critical realism in international relations circles. And his latest project to create a geopsychology, I think, is really laudable, and I would support that from the World Intellectual Forum. And all his trenchant criticism of American policy, invading Iraq, Afghanistan, without even understanding the psychology of the Afghan culture and people. It shows again why culture is so important. You missed our speaker from Berlin, Professor Jain, who's trying to revive the Delphic Games, which are about culture. I strongly believe we won't build peace until we build a world in which each culture values each other. And that's for psychological reasons. There has to be an ontological equality between all cultures. And this is so important. So you've introduced an important note to end our meeting today. So look, just to say in conclusion, we've run on a tiny bit, but just to finish a few little closing remarks. Thank you to everyone that's spoken and joined us today. Come back next month, go away with what you've learned. Let's work together on this project. Let's bring the intellectuals on the planet together to think through peace, instead of bringing the pseudo-intellectuals together to think through power and victory. As Jainism teaches, there can be no victory that is not holistic for everybody. Buddhism teaches the same. There can be no enlightenment for me unless everyone's enlightened. That's the Bodhisattvic path. So I've been working on my religious and maths book, and I've just finished the chapter on futures, future sciences, futurology. You know, I think it's another thing that's very important is each culture should have a positive image of the future that is inclusive. Too often we define our eschatologies in rivalry. You know, my God will save my people, but he's going to condemn you. This is old school thinking. We can't afford that anymore. We have to redefine eschatologies in the light of modern futurology to be universalistic and inclusive, so that we invent a new way of thinking about spirituality that is scientific and universal and inclusive. And I've been working on the mathematics of that. I think this links to the question of what is the nature of consciousness in history. By asking what is geopsychology, we can also ask, well, what is consciousness? Where's that? You know, that's the missing ingredient, as Hegel said. That's the secret energy behind the dialectic. What is consciousness? Well, I want to tell people about the Galileo project of the Scientific and Medical Network. And a bunch of really brilliant thinkers worldwide have come together to create the Galileo Commission, run by my friend David Lorimer, who spoke at a former meeting of this forum. And they're saying, well, what if scientific materialism is wrong? What if consciousness actually is a thing that has reality and its own laws of being? Look at the evidence. Look at things like near-death experience research. Look at out-of-body experience. Look at evidence for survival of the soul after death. These scientists are jumping up and down saying, actually, you know, consciousness, it really is a thing. It actually exists. It's not just matter's dream, epiphenomena. It's a thing that predates material form. And tonight I'll be attending the Galileo project. There's a speech being given by Rupert Sheldrake, an old friend of mine, who's a biologist who's pioneered this kind of thinking about consciousness and spirituality in biological terms. And these people have called it the Galileo project because in the old days, when Galileo was accused of heresy, he said, look, just look through the telescope and you'll realize that what I'm saying is right. You know, Jupiter does have moons, and you know, look through the telescope. And the Jesuit priests of the day refused to look through the telescope. The old guard of the Vatican said, no, we're not looking through the telescope. So it's the same thing now with the status of consciousness. If you look through the actual facts, look through the telescope, then we come to a world in which spiritual values, ethics, religions, they matter. And whereas the old guard of IR and political realists who used to run American politics, they're the guys that send in the army, that bomb people from the air, because they don't believe in consciousness. They don't think people matter. They come from the hard school of behaviorism, materialist science, that people are basically just robots to manipulate. And that's what justified American imperialism. That's why they, you know, behaved the way they did in Afghanistan and Iraq. So we, the World Intellectual Forum, have to challenge that intellectually for the sake of our dear American friends, people like Priscilla, who joined us earlier. You know, these are the conscience of America, these peace workers. So, yeah, so that's why I think what we're doing is important. And, you know, we need to talk about the physics of consciousness. We can talk about, instead of having rival arguments about whose prophetic lineage is best, prophetic wars between Christians, Muslims, Jews, and Hindus, let's come together and say, what is prophecy? What is prophetic consciousness? What is seership? What is it to be a seer? You know, where is universal consciousness? What is the collective superconsciousness? Is that God? Well, how can we access it? You know, those are the kind of mature questions we should be having. And that's what I would like to see the World Intellectual Forum pioneer. Maybe in Delphi or any other forum. Let's keep asking the big questions. And maybe we'll get some answers. Okay, so I'm going to finish there. So thank you so much, everyone. Those are just a few concluding remarks to everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Christian, to B.M. Jane, to everyone that spoke. Next month, hopefully, we'll have our talk on the neuroscience of love. And, you know, it was important to hear also from Bharti Jain, who joined us, that love education is at the heart of what World Intellectual Forum is trying to do. So anyway, shalom, salam to everyone. And keep working as secret wisdom agents for the universal good. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kacheni.
Thank you, Professor Thomas. Thank you very much.
My honor to
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.